This is the Sergio Rodriguez Show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sergio Rodriguez Show, a show unlike any other. Today on the show, week 9. Nice recap of the week, a week that had a lot of good moments for a lot of young quarterbacks and a lot of interesting matchups. Even like the matchup of the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars was an interesting matchup because it's going to affect a lot of the draft, and we'll get into that. We're going to speak a little about the Notre Dame Clemson game and why that game was built as something pretty big, but really in the landscape of everything was really a useless football game. We're also going to discuss week 10, a week that's going to be really telling in how the playoff picture begins to take shape. But first, Triangle Ink. Triangle Ink is the leading manufacturer in the screen printing industry, delivering the finest inks for over 35 years. Check them out at triangleink.com or call them at 1-800-524-1592. Vergona Cranes, located at 180 West Forest Avenue in Englewood, New Jersey. Vergona Cranes operates 24 hours a day, providing crane rentals, trucking services, and warehousing for storage. Vergona Cranes services the New York and New Jersey area. Call them at 201-945-7209 or on their website at vergonacrane.com. Paramus Driving School. Safety and professionalism begins with Paramus Driving School, serving the North Jersey area like no other. Contact them at paramusdrivingschool.com or call them at 201-986-8300. We go to the Sunday night game to start this off. The Saints traveled to Tampa to take on the Bucs. But first, let's go back to the beginning of the year to really understand where this game or where this season is taking shape for New Orleans. Early in the year, a lot of the talk was, particularly after the first 2 or 3 weeks, how Drew Brees looked old. He just looked like 42, But after that slow start, which, to be fair, I kind of didn't think he was as bad as a lot of the analysts were saying. I saw that there was some signs that he was getting old, but not this precipitous drop like people were thinking. But in the last 6 weeks, he has been phenomenal. And he's playing well. 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. On Sunday, he had 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, used 12 receivers. And I always mention that on my show. And the reason is because that is the mark of someone who has the grasp of the offense and what's exactly is going on. You're not keying in on receivers. And I understand for veteran guys, that's something that goes with the territory, and it's really more of an indication of where the younger guys are when they're using so many receivers like Joe Burrow is and Herbert. But I think when you look at these old guys or these older guys like Breeze and Rodgers and Brady, and they're still using the volume of receivers, it just shows you how special of a talent they really are in terms of playing the position. On the other hand, Brady looked old. Brady looked bad. He was terrible. I mean, and this is 2 weeks in a row now because he wasn't great against the Giants either. They weren't great against the Giants. And now, they go into this game knowing they needed to win to at least get a split of the season series. They played terrible. The game plan yesterday on Sunday night was just terrible. They ran the ball 5 times, the least amount of runs that any team has had since the merger. That was the first thing. Defensively, they've been a team based basically mostly man-to-man defense the whole year. They were playing zone. I mean, just the game plan was just terrible. Terrible. I just believe right now Tampa has no identity. What are they? Are they a running team? They have Leonard Fournette, who's a big bruising back. They throw him swing passes. You know, they have a good receiving core, but there's not enough balls to keep everybody happy. And that coaching staff every week keeps on throwing Brady under the bus in their press conferences, or Bruce Arians does. Tampa now is 6-3. They go to Carolina, a Carolina team that, to be fair, has been playing everybody well this year. Then they have the Rams and the Chiefs. I said last week they needed to go 3-0 if they wanted to be the 1 seed before they played the Chiefs. They already lost game 1. I think that the 1 seed for now is on the back burner. The Saints are 6-2. They have the 49ers, the Falcons, and then they travel to Denver. Green Bay 34-17 over the 49ers was the Thursday night game. Rodgers doing his Rodgers things. 25 for 31, 305, 4 touchdowns. You know, he every week is must-watch TV if you are a fan of how guys do their jobs. 173 of those 305 went to Devontae Adams, who again continues to prove he's the best receiver in football right now at this point. The 49ers basically had a practice squad unit. That's what they put out there on offense. And it showed. They only had the ball for 23 minutes the entire game. Couldn't muster up anything. They scored really the last 2 drives with 5 minutes to go. They punched one in. And that was basically the extent of their offense. Green Bay got Aaron Jones back. They didn't have to use him much. He had 15 carries for 58 yards. It was basically, the game was over basically at the half, so it wasn't like they had to do too much. The 49ers are 4-5, and the schedule's just too hard moving forward. I just can't see them recovering, you know, from the injuries and the schedule that they have coming up. Green Bay at 6-2. They have the Jaguars at home. They should roll there. Then they're at the Colts, a game that could be tricky. The Colts are a funny team because if you can play enough offense against them, they have trouble scoring at times. Green Bay then has the Bears, the Eagles, and at Detroit. The Steelers beat the Cowboys 24-19 in the game where, to be fair, they were outplayed for damn near 85% of the game. I mean, they didn't take the lead till late in the fourth quarter. They were unmotivated. They just looked. It looked like what it should have been. It was a trap game right after the Ravens win. The Cowboys are finally buying in a little to the defense that's being played there, the new scheme that no one put in. They're buying in a little. They've played well the last couple of weeks. I mean, they held Pitt to 46 yards rushing. So they're doing something right. Essentially, the game came down to a huge penalty. It was a roughing the passer on a play where did they touch Roethlisberger's face mask? Yeah, they did. But my God, I mean, that penalty just basically, instead of ending a drive and giving the Cowboys the ball and the lead with under 4 minutes, basically gave the Steelers an opportunity to take the lead. And the Cowboys, look, they had to piece it together to get 19 points. It wasn't like they were world beaters. You know, Garrett Gilbert played better than they've gotten the last couple of weeks at that position from the backups. And they did enough, but enough just wasn't going to be enough. You know, if you know what I mean. If you watch the game, you just realize that you were waiting for the shoe to drop, and 19 points was good enough for the quarterback play that they got, but they needed one more score, and they just could not muster it. The one thing Gilbert did was he got the wide receivers involved. And Dallas rushed for 144 yards. So they had some semblance of offense. Moving forward, let's see what Dallas can do at least to stay competitive. I mean, they're really only one game out of first place if you really want to get crazy. Big Ben was 29 for 42, 306, 3 touchdowns. Did have a leg injury in the game. Missed a couple of snaps, but came back. Pitt's going to go 10-0. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago before they go play the Ravens on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys have a bye next week. The Monday night game was a snoozer. Patriots 30, Jets 27. Now, let me be clear about something. It was a snoozer coming in. It was probably it was more entertaining than I thought it was going to be, particularly in the fourth quarter. The Patriots, who were down basically the entire game, scored 13 points in the fourth to beat the Jets. The Jets, just like the Cowboys Steelers game, the Jets outplayed the Patriots for 3 quarters. But like I said, they got outscored 13-0 in the fourth quarter. They blew a 27-17 lead going into that quarter. And look, they did the Jets things, but that's good for them. They don't want to win right now. You want to be locked into that number 1 pick. You don't want to be winning these games that mean nothing right now. The Pats got a huge game from the law firm of Jacoby and Myers. 12 catches for $169. Flacco played good yesterday. He made the one ill-advised throw on the interception, but 252, 3 touchdowns. Most of that yardage went to Perryman, who had 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. Interesting is the time of possession for that game. Even though that the Jets were outplaying severely, in my opinion, the Patriots for 3 quarters. The Pats had the time of possession 37-23, which was mind-boggling to me when I finally saw that stat after the game. The Jets have a bye, and the Pats host the Ravens on Sunday night. The Falcons beat the Broncos 34-27. And the Falcons now have won 3 out of 4. And to be fair, if Gurley would have just taken a knee or not scored against Detroit a couple of weeks ago and just stopped at the 1 and they kicked the field goal, they would have had now 4 in a row. Matt Ryan, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, helped the Falcons build that 20-3 halftime lead. They really never looked back. Drew Lock's numbers for Denver look better than he really played. A lot of that stuff came in the fourth quarter. 313, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jared Jeudy, the rookie from Alabama, finally had that breakout game that everybody, including my nephew Steven, had been waiting for. He caught 7 balls for $125 and a touchdown. Denver's next 4 opponents are 24-9. So that 3-5 record, it's going to get worse. The Bills 44-34 over Seattle in what, in my opinion, was the marquee game during the 1 o'clock time slot. Got a chance to watch this game twice. I actually watched it live, and then I went back and saw some things on it. Josh Allen just outplayed Russell Wilson. And look, Josh Allen, if you haven't bought into Josh Allen by now, then you don't know what you're watching. 31 for 38, 415, 3 touchdowns. Russell Wilson's numbers in terms of the 28 for 41 for 390 and 2 touchdowns look good. But Russell Wilson, especially when they play teams who have good quarterbacks, and why that's important, before I mentioned the fact that he had the 2 interceptions and the 2 fumbles, he had the 4 turnovers. A lot of Russell Wilson's turnovers right now are coming from either trying to extend plays or forcing things downfield. Why? Every defense in his division, Seattle's, Arizona, 49ers. Let's leave the Rams out of it. The Rams are pretty good. But the 3 other teams, terrible. And Russell Wilson knows his defense is no good. And he knows that, especially if they're playing a good quarterback on the other end, he's going to have to go for 35, 40 points if he's going to want to win these games. The Bills, who I have said all year, are going to be a tough out in the playoffs need to figure out a way to run the ball that doesn't involve Josh Allen. They only had 34 yards rushing, and the yards for the game were even. It wasn't like they dominated in terms of yardage. They dominated in terms of the score and how the game shaped up, but a lot of that was turnover driven. Seattle just could not overcome those 4 turnovers. The Bills are 7-2, and they go to Arizona. Seattle travels to the Rams, and if they lose that game, that league is going to get jumbled up. And the Rams, the Rams have the best defense in that league. They could still win that division. Tennessee 24-17 over the Bears. The Bears fell behind 17-0. And look, the Bears can't score in games where they're down 3-0, let alone if they fall behind 17-0. And Nick Foles' numbers, don't be fooled. He had 335 for 2 touchdowns. But again, it took 52 throws to get to 335 yards. A.J. Brown for Tennessee, big game. 4 catches for $101 and a touchdown. Realistically, he had all of the yardage that Tannehill threw for. Tannehill was only at about 150 for the game. Tennessee has not been sharp, and we spoke about that last week after they lost to Cincinnati. Tannehill only had 10 completions, but he did not turn the ball over, and that's the key. That's the key for Tennessee. You know you're going to be in games because you can run the ball most of the time with Henry, and you know that your defense is pretty good. If you don't turn the ball over, you're going to be fine. Tennessee is 7-2. The next 3 weeks are rough. Colts, at Baltimore, at the Colts again. You go 2-1, you're sitting pretty. You go 1-2, you're probably going to still win that division as long as those 2 losses are not both to the Colts. Chicago's 5-3. They're home to Minnesota, at Green Bay, Detroit, and Houston. Ravens 24-10 over the Colts. And this game was lost by Indy. I'm not going to give the Ravens too much credit here. Indy was up 7-0 and in Baltimore territory when they fumbled the ball and gave up a touchdown return the other way. They come back out of the half where they're up 10-7 at the half, come out, and Rivers, again, in plus territory, throws another interception, or throws an interception that gave Baltimore essentially the ball at midfield. Actually, they were not in plus territory, but they gave the ball to Baltimore in plus territory near midfield. Rivers, who had played well the last 2 games, did not play well. Lamar Jackson had his usual all Saquon game, right? He threw for $170. He ran for 58 and a touchdown. Baltimore is 6-2, but they need to win some games here if they're going to catch a break somewhere along the way with passing Kansas City for that 2 seed, if that's something that they really are going to play for. I don't know if they can catch the Steelers, especially because they do have to play them one more time, and they have to travel to do that in Pittsburgh on a short week. But Baltimore 6-2, plays the Pats now. They're at the Pats. Then they have Tennessee. And like I said, they have to win these games if they're going to make a push for the 2 seed. I just don't see them catching Pittsburgh for the 1 seed. The Colts have the Titans twice, like we just said, and Green Bay. They need to win 2 out of those 3 to make the playoffs. KC 33-31 over Carolina. And look, Matt Rule, the coach for the Carolina Panthers, has done a phenomenal job with this team. This team is 3-6 now. They're not 6-3. They're 3-6. But they play hard every week. And they've been missing their best player for most of the season. McCaffrey came back, gave them 69 yards on 18 carries, had a touchdown, but he might be hurt again and might miss week 10 now. Teddy Bridgewater, 36 for 49, 310, 2 touchdowns, and Curtis Samuel, who I'll tell you is one of those guys that every week you look up and he plays well. 9 catches, $105, and 1 touchdown. Also helps with some of the running back duties, particularly when McCaffrey has been out. Matt Rule did do something in this game that I found very, very interesting. And when I mean interesting, I mean interestingly bad. I thought he made one terrible decision this game. At 26-24 with 10 minutes left, he tried an onside kick. Why? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I just felt that I get what part of his thinking is, but I think that this is almost like what I always say with these baseball guys, that they play the game before it happens. He made a decision sometime during this week that he was going to onside kick to try to steal a possession because he didn't think he could stop this team from just scoring and scoring and scoring. But the fact is, they had controlled Kansas City. Kansas City had not really done much on offense. They had scored 24 points at that time, but it wasn't like Kansas City was just going up and down the field on them. And they gave Kansas City the short field, and it ended up being, you know, what it should be with a team like Kansas City. It ended up being a touchdown and a lead that was just insurmountable. Kansas City was down 14-3 and then down 17-3 when Carolina missed a field goal, and that really turned the game around, and that put Kansas City back in the game. Kansas City scored 2 touchdowns to go up 26-17, and then, like I said, Carolina cut it to 26-24, and I just didn't like that onside kick. I just felt that they had the game. No one had control of the game. Kansas City was not. It wasn't like they were fighting just to stay in that game. Mahomes threw for 372 and 4 touchdowns. Mahomes on the season, 25 touchdowns, 1 interception. Kid has thrown for damn near 2,700 yards on the season. Minnesota 34-20 over Detroit. Dalvin Cook, 22 for 206. 2 weeks in a row, Dalvin Cook just is churning out the yardage, the touchdowns, and proving why he's the best back in football. He also had 2 touchdown catches, or not 2 touchdowns, 2 catches for 46 yards. He ended up with 252 all Saquon yards. Cousins, again, I said this in one of our earlier shows, the blueprint for Minnesota. You want to win games? Keep Cousins to under 23, 24 throws. Cousins, 13 for 20, 220, 3 touchdowns. And it's easy to do when Dalvin Cook is running for over 150 every week. Stafford left the game with a concussion in the third, with the game 27-10. He threw 2 interceptions deep in Minnesota territory. That was the big turning point in those games. One actually after a block punt, which basically sealed the deal for Minnesota. Detroit goes over 400 yards on offense, but only scores 20 points. That's an issue. But that was a product of those 2 turnovers in the plus side of the field. And they also had the time of possession, which was big. They had 275 yards. Think about this for a second. They had the time of possession, and Minnesota had 275 yards rushing. So that should show you that Detroit wasn't really playing bad here, but those 2 turnovers were just crippling. Minnesota plays Chicago on Monday night. They go to Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Then they have Dallas and the Panthers. I told you guys, Minnesota could get to 7-5. They really could. I'm interested to see what that line in that Minnesota-Chicago game is next week. The Giants, 23-20 over Washington. And this game came down to turnovers. 3 by Washington, 0 by the Giants. I said 0 by the Giants. And I know what you guys out there are thinking. You mean to tell me Danny Pennies didn't have his usual 2? No. I mean, now look, he didn't do anything spectacular. He barely got over 200 yards, but we know that's his MO. He got 212 yards. He did throw a touchdown, but he protected the ball. The Giants ran for $166. They did it by committee. Goldman had his yards. Morris had his yards. They did it by committee, especially when they needed to. In that last drive, really to hold on a little to the ball and make sure that Washington didn't get it back with too much time. Kyle Allen broke his ankle. Alex Smith came into the game, threw for 325 yards, but he also threw three interceptions. And he's starting next week and probably moving forward for the rest of the year. McLaurin, 7 for $115 and a touchdown. Sims, 3 for 110 for Washington, or the Washington football team. I keep on calling them the Redskins, guys. You guys are going to have to forgive me for at least 5 years with this. The Giants, 2-7, only one game out of first place, or really 1.5, but they have the Eagles coming up next week, and then they're at the Bengals. Houston, 27-25 over the Jaguars. And look, this game specifically told us a lot about both these teams. Let's start with Houston first. Here's what I got from this game when I watched it. Houston's going to be bad for the next couple of years. Period. They had 107 yards rushing, 50 of them from Watson. And realistically, with no help coming in terms of draft picks, because they damn near gave them all away, and with a defense that is spotty at best, I don't know how Houston is going to fix everything that is wrong in the next couple of years. Understand that the Jaguars were playing a backup quarterback. Gardner Minshew had a thumb injury, did not play. The Jaguars started a 6th-round draft pick, a kid by the name of Jake Luton, I believe you pronounce his last name. And Houston was still nip and tuck in this game with these guys. Now, I will say this about the kid, about the rookie. Kid's a rookie from Oregon State. Big kid, 6'6". He was 26 for 38 for 304. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He actually did run for 1 also. And look, the game came down to a 2-point conversion to tie the game. By the way, the kid Luton looked great in the 2-minute drill. Chark, 7 for 46 for a touchdown for the Jaguars. Robinson, 25 for 99. That 99 number always kills fantasy, guys. He also did have a touchdown. Fuller, on the other hand, for Houston, 5 for 100 and a TD. And Watson, he wasn't bad. 19 for 32, 281 and 2 touchdowns. The Raiders, 31-26, and what ended up being over the Chargers, and what ended up being a really entertaining game, particularly in the fourth quarter. Now, look, let's discuss the Raiders first. They won the game. And in the NFL, you take your wins and you go home. But let me show you how sometimes stats don't tell the story of the game. The Raiders were outgained 440 to 320. They ran for 160 yards, but had 2 backs with 68 and 65 respectively, right? It wasn't like they were just churning out yardage and they had a 100-yard back who was just dominating the game. They did not. They threw for 165 on only 13 completions. Carr only had 13 completions. And they lost the time of possession 35-25. They got out first downed 26-16. If you look at all those stats, and then take into consideration that Herbert for the Chargers was 28 of 42 with 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, okay? The fact that they ran for 128, the fact that they ran 75 plays to the Raiders 50, you think the Raiders got beat by 3 touchdowns. They did not. Ironically, the game did come down to the last play, the last 2 plays, 2 drop touchdown passes. One by Mike Williams, and the other by Parham. After a 15-play drive from Herbert, drove them down. They threw 2 fades, both times ball in the receiver's hands and out. The Raiders played Denver and then the Chiefs. Miami 34-31 over the Cardinals. And let's start with Tua. He's 2-0 now. Didn't do much game one. Did what he needed to do in game two. First, the good. 20 for 28, 248, 2 TDs. He used 7 receivers. One of the things that I mentioned earlier. And he made the plays that needed to be made to win the game. Whether it was escaping the pocket and running, whether it was escaping the pocket within to find time to throw the ball. He had one of those Jimmy Garoppolo games in my opinion, that's who I believe he's going to mimic. A guy that will win you games, a guy that will do enough for you to win, but not a guy that's going to be a difference maker like a Herbert or a Burrows. I don't think he's going to be that guy, but that's okay if you are going to just figure out a way to put some chess pieces around them. They need to find this kid a ground game next year if they're going to want to, have him survive for 16 games, because I do believe he's a little fragile. He had the hip injury last year, and I know he didn't miss many games due to injuries, but he was not finishing a lot of games. There were at least six to 8 games off the top of my head that I remember him having to leave and not being able to finish for a variety of injuries. They dummied down some of his reads, giving him one-way throws outside the number. So, look, I think he can come along, and to be fair, he's got a soft spot of the schedule coming up here. Miami's got the Chargers, at Denver, at the Jets, and Cincinnati. So he's got an opportunity here to get his feet wet and do his thing. And look, he just played against a defense that's not very good, but he did what he needed to do. So we'll leave it at that. Kyler Murray, 21 for 26, 283, three touchdowns, 11 carries for 106 yards, 389 all Saquon yards. I disagreed with the going for the 4th and 1, with not going for the 4th and 1 and kicking the field goal. Field goal ended up being short. They never got the ball back. Miami got out yardaged 442 to 312 in yardage and 178 to 91 in rushing. But they figured out a way to win it, and Miami's now 5-3. And I'm happy for that coaching staff, because that coaching staff, if they're not in the top 5, they're definitely in the top 7 or 8. What they've done there with that team, phenomenal. Lucimer Auto Body, located at 27 Austin Street in Newark, provides top-of-the-line service to make your collision experience as smooth as possible. Go to lucimer.com or call them at 973-824-0113. JJ Farber Lotman, providers of wholesale insurance at competitive rates for small and medium businesses. Go to jjfl.com or get an instant quote by calling 844-502-8923. M&J Luxury Inc. For the most unique experience in the medical transportation business, call M&J. Located in New York City with over 1,000 cars at your disposal, call them at 718-278-2222 or at 914-484-7264. This weekend, Notre Dame played Clemson, and they beat them in double overtime. And, I watched the fourth quarter and the overtime of that game. But here's the problem that I had with the way that they were building the game before, with the way Notre Dame fans celebrated. And not the fans, the students who rushed the field in celebration, because they're college kids. That's what they do. I'm okay with that. That's part of the whole ambiance of being at a football game and being at a football school. This game meant nothing. Folks, this game meant nothing. understand that the ACC, which normally has 2 divisions, this year because of allowing Notre Dame in and the whole COVID situation, they went to a 1-division format. That 1 division means that whoever finishes first and second is going to play for the ACC title. The only way that game mattered was if Clemson won. And even if Clemson won, Notre Dame was probably going to end up the 2 seed anyway because they don't play Miami. And they would have been tied, but Notre Dame would have probably ended up winning the tiebreaker. These leagues have to do something about these situations because Notre Dame wins this game. Their consolation price to play Clemson a game on a neutral field for the ACC title at full strength. Because to be fair, Clemson wasn't at full strength, but you know what? That's part of the game. That's football. You lost, Notre Dame won. It is what it is. But you're going to have to go play that game, and you're going to have to win that to get into the Final Four. Why? Because the ACC is terrible, my friends. The only other team that's ranked other than Notre Dame and Clemson is Miami. Clemson played Miami, and Notre Dame is not. But Clemson's got the cachet of being Clemson. Notre Dame's got the cachet of year after year losing to the big boys. They're not going to get the benefit of the doubt, and Notre Dame's schedule's damn near terrible. So if they have one loss in the ACC title game and they're up against a Texas A&M or a Florida one-loss team from the SEC, they're not going to go, to Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. Those teams are going to go. And you're not going to take a one-loss Notre Dame team with that league being so terrible. Understand that the Virginia Tech is 4-2 in the ACC. They're damn near the 4th or the 5th place team in that league. They just lost to Liberty this week at home. I said Liberty. I always go through this in March when I'm watching these NCAA tournament games and people and these people try to sell me on these games, but also these networks. You have to watch Duke and North Carolina for the ACC title tonight. Number 1 Duke versus number 3 North Carolina. The game means nothing. They're both going to the NCAA tournament, and they're probably both going to be 1 seeds. Worst case, they're going to be a 2 seed. I mean, it ain't a big deal. The game I want to watch is Iona Manhattan. I want to watch Fairleigh Dickinson playing against, Robert Morris. Those are the games that you want to watch. Back in the day, the old, Robert Morris FDU, when I was back in the old NEC days, the 1-bid leagues. Those are the games that you want to watch. So for all those people that got excited about this, relax. You're going to have to run this back again in a couple of weeks, and you're going to probably end up losing that game if you're Notre Dame, and you did all this, again, for nothing. Fairfield Physical Therapy Center, located in the Fairfield Commons Suite G106, is owned and operated by Justin Solotov, who has over 20 years of experience in the field of orthopedic physical therapy. Call Justin at 973-276-1313 and stop living with pain and discomfort. Epic Car Service, recognized as the #1 car service in New York City by medical transportation standards, located in the Bronx, New York, Epic Car Service will make your commute a safe and comfortable experience. Call Epic at 718-401-3742 or at 844-666-6278. The Sergio Rodriguez portion of Week 10 picks, or Week 10 breakdown, really, because our picks are obviously put on Instagram on Thursday or Friday. And by the way, speaking of our picks, 4-2-1 this week. We go to 29-17-2 this year. We have been smoking. And for the 9th straight week, if you bet every game we gave you, you have not had a losing week. But sponsoring Week 10 Breakdown is Stan's Sports Center, one of the oldest and most recognized sporting goods stores in New Jersey, located on Washington Street in Hoboken and in Saddlebrook. Stan's has been recognized as a historical institution. Call Stan's at 201-773-6891 or at stansportsctr.com. Week 10. And we take a look at these lines for the first time. The Thursday night game, Tennessee is a 2-point favorite against Indianapolis. I'm surprised with that line. They're giving Indianapolis a lot of credit. And look, I understand Tennessee has not played well in a lot of these games, but they figured out a way to win. And I just don't know if Indianapolis has the offense to keep up with these guys right now. They're doing the running back by committee thing right now. I just don't know how they're going to take care of business here. That line also started at that total started at 51.5, and it's at 48.5. So a little weird line. That's a game I would never touch. Pittsburgh is a 7.5-point favorite at home against Cincinnati. Expect a bounce back effort from Pittsburgh here, even though Cincinnati's coming off a bye. Detroit is a 4-point favorite over Washington. You might want to wait to see if Stafford plays in that game. Washington with Alex Smith will be solid because he's always been a solid quarterback, but I just don't know if physically he can really play football at a high level anymore. And he had those 3 turnovers, which is very uncharacteristic of him. Cleveland coming off a bye is a 3-point favorite over Houston. I expect Cleveland to get the job done. Again, Houston, I don't know if this line is more Houston is getting credit or Cleveland is not. But you're basically telling me that these two teams are equal on a neutral field? I can't see that. Green Bay is a 13.5-point favorite at home against Jacksonville. Green Bay is going to roll. Philadelphia is a 3.5-point favorite coming off a bye on the road at the Giants. It's another game that's a little bit of a weird line. I expected that line to be 4 or 5. I think that line will probably be 4 or 4.5 when the game kicks off. Tampa Bay is a 4.5-point favorite at Carolina, and I'm telling you right now, I love Carolina in that game. If I had to bet that game right now, I'm betting Carolina because I think a lot of money is going to go Tampa Bay's way, expecting that they're going to make a comeback, a bounce back after the last 2 weeks. It's a tricky game, but if I had to bet that game, I'm betting Carolina. Las Vegas, the Raiders are a 5-point favorite at home over Denver. There's going to be a lot of points in that game. Remember, I told you that. Arizona is a 1.5-point favorite at Buffalo. I'm shocked at that line. Arizona is being given a lot of credit. That total is 56, my Lord. That just tells you that they believe Buffalo's going to go in there and score. It's just a matter of if Arizona just plays a little bit better at home than they did last week against Miami. The Rams are a 1.5-point favorite and another total that's high as hell here, 56.5 against Seattle. And they're telling you Seattle's a better team by that line. Or at least that's the way it's being sold to me here. New Orleans is a 9-point favorite over the 49ers. And the thing with these games is, particularly with the 49ers, is you have to wait. You have to damn near wait till an hour before kickoff to see who's going to play for the 49ers. Baltimore is a 7-point favorite on the road against New England. I just don't see how New England musters up enough offense to stay within 7 points. I will say this. I can see them staying in the game defensively. I just don't know. I think you could get a backdoor cover by Baltimore here. And this game could end up being like a 13-point game where they score a late touchdown because I just don't see how New England is going to muster up enough points. Miami is a 2.5-point favorite at home against the Chargers. Problem with betting against the Chargers is that you know one thing. You know they're going to lose and that they're going to find a way to lose. You just don't know if they're going to lose by a point or not. I mean, they move the ball on everybody and they compete, but they'll find a way to lose. You just don't know if they're going to lose 21-20, 28-27. And in the Monday night game, Minnesota is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at Chicago. That line tells me Chicago's winning that game. Well, we've come to the end of another episode. Thank you for joining us. And remember that the Sergio Rodriguez Show is a show unlike any other.